Impact Interview is sponsored by the Pocono Mountains, where small-town charm meets big adventures. Book your trip today by visiting PoconoMountains.com.
Welcome back to Nittany Game Week. Our Impact Interview guest this week is Gary Danielson of CBS Sports. He was a high school two-time state champ in Michigan and was, of course, part of Purdue's great quarterback tradition in college before an 11-year NFL career. Spent almost 20 years with ESPN and ABC before joining CBS in 2006. Gary, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time.
Hey, my pleasure. It's fun to always do any Big Ten game, but Penn State has always been special for me. A lot of good friends there.
Well, one thing that we noticed right away is how top-heavy the league has gotten with 18 teams, even with Oregon and Ohio State, Indiana, and Penn State. Why do you think these four teams have been able to separate from the pack this year?
Well, that's a good question because they're all different, but you are right. The league is top-heavy, and that helps the top teams this year. Obviously, no one could have thought this IU deal would work the way it is, but everybody's been able to kind of pick apart the rest of their schedule. But, there are four legitimate contenders, I think, here. Oregon is for real, obviously Ohio State, Penn State. And then IU, they got a great group of fighters. All of us that have competed in sports like this story. Maybe not if you're a Purdue fan, but if you're everybody else in college football, you're pretty enamored with a group of guys, a bunch of misfits that none of the big schools wanted. And, Curt Cignetti takes them, and a guy who's put in, years and years and years to get this job, and it turns out to be like this. So it's been a great year to cover the Big Ten.
So, Gary, Purdue has a great tradition of producing both astronauts and NFL quarterbacks, a tradition you're part of. Which is more impressive, the astronauts or the NFL quarterbacks?
We both positions, okay? Quarterback or astronaut they're dependent on a lot of people to do the right thing. The astronauts sitting on top of that booster, and us, that pocket protection and having the right coordinator and the right receivers. That's what attracted me, though. I wanted to go to Purdue. I was coming out of high school. I wanted to play in the Big Ten. It's a funny story. The first memory I have, because I just played football. I never watched football growing up, and first memory I really have, my uncle got a new color TV, and we were at his house for the New Year's Rose Bowl, and Wisconsin played USC, the Rand Vanderkellen game against Pete Beathard. And I was just like, I want to do that someday. I want to play in that Rose Bowl. So, I was recruited by Alabama because I had some ties there. I went to their camp and I was recruited pretty heavily. But Notre Dame, Michigan, Purdue, and Michigan State. But I was enamored with the ability to go throw the ball at Purdue. And at that time, Purdue was really the only school that really threw the drop back passing game. And they did that until I got there. And then I had the fun task of running the wishbone when I was in college. So that wasn't right up my alley. But it toughened me up and made me better. So my NFL career was probably dependent on me being humbled a bit in college. And I was a much tougher player when I went to the NFL.
Gary, you've seen Penn State live. What stands out about them this year, and why should Penn State fans have playoff optimism?
Mostly what I think about this Penn State team is it's typical of what I've seen in past years when I've covered them. They've beaten everybody. Lately they've struggled to get past two pretty good teams. Michigan and Ohio State have been loaded. But I was pretty impressed with that last drive that Drew put in our game and at USC. I mean, anytime, you have the record that Drew Aller had, taking care of the ball, making the right decisions, and he comes out on the road, against a high profile team, national television, and throws a couple interceptions, two of them that the defense saved. I think they held both of them to field goals in that game. But he got the ball back, with about 6 minutes to go in the game. 2 fourth down plays. I know the CBS is going to feature those plays going into this game sometime, either this week or next week against Minnesota. I think those 2 fourth down plays, one of them when Drew got out of the pocket and hit Julian Fleming, the first one I really thought they should have punted the ball with about 5 minutes to go. But, Coach Franklin called both of them. He got away with both of them. I think that's one of the coolest parts of this team. They struggled in the red zone both against USC and against Ohio State for different reasons. But I think it's a team this time with the new structure of 12 teams. I mean, right now, they'd be licking their wounds wondering what could possibly get them in the playoffs. Well, right now, they're in the middle of it, and they control their own destiny.
CBS Sports college football analyst Gary Danielson will be on the call for Penn State Purdue this Saturday at 3:30 Eastern on CBS, as well as next Saturday for Penn State Minnesota at 3:30 Eastern. You can catch him alongside Brad Nessler and Jenny Dell, calling a Big Ten matchup every Saturday at 3:30 on CBS. And Gary, you've been a Big Ten guy most of your life. How much fun has it been going back to the Big Ten these past 2 seasons after a number of years in the SEC? I would imagine there's been some things that spark the memories, right, as you visit these towns.
Yeah, that's for sure. I don't know. I don't know if anybody's been more blessed than I have been. I was really fortunate to get in the NFL. I really played 13 years. I threw, as Tom and Jay will tell you, in that league, you can wash out of that league throwing 15 passes and not doing well. I threw over 2,000 passes in the NFL, so I had a blessed career in the NFL. And then to get this job, I worked with Brad doing the Big Ten football on ESPN when, Jay and, Coach and everybody at Penn State doing all those years at Penn State. Got an opportunity to go with CBS, do the national game at the SEC. That league was exploding when I went there. That was quite an experience for me. I did 18 years of doing that. So now my 35th year of being a lead analyst on nationally televised games, to come back to the Big Ten and round out my career. I mean, pretty blessed my whole career. I've got a great family, got 14 grandchildren, pretty lucky guy. And to maybe finish it up here doing this national, Big Ten championship and getting back into the Big Ten is a pretty good thrill for me.
So talking about that, your broadcast with Brad and Jenny Dell come across as 3 people genuinely having fun doing their jobs and working together. How important is it to have a great team both on camera and also on the production side and truck and everywhere else?
Yeah, Jay, you're right. I mean, I've worked play-by-play. I mean, I don't know if you can have it better than this. I worked with really 3 Hall of Fame play-by-play announcers my whole career. Brad and I were together for 7.5 years at ESPN and ABC. And then I went to work with Brett Musburger for 7 years to finish out my career over there at ABC. Then I go with Vern Lundquist for, I think, 11 years, and now back with Brad. I mean, can you have it better than that, going with Nessler, Musburger, and Lundquist, and then back with Nessler? So I think all 3 of them are Hall of Fame and great sideline reporters. And it's hard to believe. I think I've done over 530 live football telecasts, I think more than anyone has done any college games, and sat in some cool games and some great stories and mostly consequential games. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. College football is great. There's always an argument. This week, the argument is by Ohio State, too many noon games, The talk radio and these college fans will find something to complain about every week. But I love that intensity. I really do. You can go do these NFL games, and it's tough. I played in that league. It's not easy. And there's a lot of great games, and I love watching it. But the intensity of the fan base and the love of their team, it's something. You say something wrong about Ohio State or Michigan or Alabama or Georgia, and truthfully, you don't even have to say anything wrong. If it's just a little bit not the way they see it, they hunt you down. And I love that intensity. I got that as a player, and I love it as an analyst. It's really a fun job to have.
Hey, let's stick to the NFL for a minute. You grew up in Michigan and played for the Detroit Lions.
Yeah.
How much fun it is to see the Detroit Lions' success this year?
Yeah, Tommy, that's great. Those fans went through so much. I was on a Detroit radio station the other day, and I go, I love you guys, and I love the Lions, and I love the fans, and they're so fired up. But being a competitor, I go, our 1980 team with Billy Sims and Keith Dorney, we had a Penn State Keith Dorney. Yeah, well, he was my right tackle, Did you really? Oh, yeah, Keith was the best, and Yeah, so we that team was really good, and we got hurt a lot, and that's what I hope. With Hutch getting hurt this year, I hope the team doesn't get nicked too much. You're going to lose, about 10 to 15% of your team every year in the NFL. But if you lose it at one position, that's what happened to us. We lost Dorney for 6 games. We lost our top 2 centers, and we were just never the same. And if we'd have made the playoffs, we'd have listen to me talk about my 1980 team. But I'm happy for these guys. But being a competitor, I always think that you know what, we are not the best team, and we played a lot of great teams. But I take this as part of this Purdue game, doing this game against Penn State. I literally never went into any game, no matter who I played for or what our record was, where I go, we got no chance, we can't win this game. And sometimes I was playing against Starbuck or Marino or John Elway or Dan Fouts, and but I said, hey, let's do it. So I don't know if the Boilermakers will be Spoilermakers, and I know the Penn State people don't want to hear that, but I think of Penn State, and I know their coaching staff, they need to take care of their business, be disciplined, and play Penn State football, and they'll be fine.
Well, Gary, the names you've rolled off in the last few minutes evokes a lot of awesome football memories, both pro and college. And you mentioned the Hall of Fame announcers. I'm kind of a golf guy by nature, so I always think that second weekend in Augusta in April. And you mentioned Vern Lundquist. What are some of the little things that made Vern special? I mean, we've heard from all those guys; they're all great announcers, but Vern just kind of seems to have that genuine, guy next door feel. And what kind of guy has he been?
Yeah, I think that the fans could relate to Vern as somebody they knew, that they had, an uncle or a brother or somebody that they would watch a game with on television. And, Vern was just comfortable, I mean, when you turned on the game, you could recognize him. And Vern had that special way of telling the story when he needed to tell it and being excited about what he was doing. And, he was great to work with. He was. He loved his Texas football. So if there was anybody that ever made any tackle on the field that was Texas, he had a story about it. We used to kind of laugh about that during the game. But, I remember all those great, Alabama games, and we were in the SEC for all those years, and LSU games that we did. But really what stands out is that time we did all those Army-Navy games together. I've done, I think, 17 of them now, and most of them with Vern. So those are special memories. We both loved doing it. We visited both academies the week before the games, and all the things we do, the championships and the great players, being able to broadcast that game at the end of the year is a special thrill too.
Well, I think you mentioned you have over 530 live telecasts, and now you have one Nittany Game Week interview under your belt too. We really appreciate the time.
I always love to talk to the Penn State fans. They're the greatest. I always put the Penn State fans, the Nebraska fans, that just really love their football and respect it. And a lot of great memories with everybody, and Tommy and Jay and everybody at that, all the old coaches that I was able to get together with, and they continue to play great football. So looking forward to the game.